Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X-Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X-Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X-Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X-Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X-Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X-Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
Welcome back to another episode of Cal's Corner Radio here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Cal Korff, and I'm your host. The executive producer of the show is the one and only Rob McConnell. Folks, haven't been on the air for a couple of weeks. I apologize over that fact. Let me quickly explain what happened. Make a long story short, as you know, I did an event on the 19th of October. I'll come back to that in a little bit here. We'll talk about it at much more length in the show, why it's important and so on. And then what happened is I was planning to do the event and then talk about it, on the show, but we were not able to time both of them. The event ended up being a little over 9 hours, much longer than planned. But the good news is of the 10 cases, which we'll go into in a bit, which got talked about, slides shared, information sent to media partners, and again, I'll talk about them in a few minutes. Everything went fine. It went so fine that I got pushed out of my own schedule. And then what happened is I thought, okay, I'll talk about it a week later. And then I ended up getting a cold for the first time in a long time in many countries later, and just caught me completely by surprise. And unfortunately, 3 other colleagues of mine also got what I did, and, all of us took a hit. So anyway, that's a short version of what had happened. Again, I'm sorry it did, and we'll try to make up for it, and then some, hopefully, on this show here. Well, welcome back again to Cal's Corner. As you know, we cover everything from politics to the paranormal. This episode is not going to be an exception to that. Let's cut to the chase on politics. A lot has gone on, and then we'll cut to the paranormal. Now, regarding politics, there's a couple of events going on around the world. One is Brexit is going to try to happen again. So this time they're supposed to do a vote sometime in the next couple of months, theoretically, okay? We'll see what happens. This time it looks like it really may go down. Otherwise, there'll be yet another election. We'll see what happens. Let's say Brexit happened tomorrow. What is the future of the UK? Well, the short version is they're screwed, but their choice. Anyway, they don't have a plan to handle this gracefully, to exit gracefully, and to replace the EU with something that is an equivalent that works without all the perks and, of course, headaches of being a member of the EU. They never came close to that, so this is going to be very fun by the time they have to wake up and, taste the consequences of their decision and how they mismanaged even managing to execute that decision. All right. Another thing that happened is the killing of al-Baghdadi. This is, of course, the leader of the Islamic State. They're an Islamo-fascist terrorist group. And, of course, there are people who, they like to say, well, you can't say they're Islamo-fascist because, that's offends Muslims or you're being, hating a religion or something. Stop the nonsense. Don't even go there. We've been over this before. It is perfectly valid to declare that something is Islamo-fascist if it is, as well as Islamist if it is. As long as you declare whatever it is, doesn't matter what the subject is, to be the truth, then if anybody complains about it, it's their issue. So let me remind, especially you progressives out there and young right-click wonders on the internet, what the difference is between an Islamist group, terrorist group, and an Islamo-fascist terrorist group, whether you like the term or not. An Islamist group, to be blunt, simply seeks regional power. That's it. They're not interested in what happens in the U.S. if they don't live there. They're not interested sometimes even in the next-door neighbor's goings-on. They're just interested in local, regional stuff. That's it. They stay within their borders, okay? A group that is a perfect, living, breathing, deadly example of this is the Taliban. They're not interested in conquering the U.S. They're not al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda, on the other hand, is interested in taking over the entire world. So is the Islamic State. So is Hamas. So is Hezbollah, okay? They are Islamo-fascist groups. Hamas is the military wing of a larger umbrella group known as the Muslim Brotherhood, who wants to replace every system on the planet with a thing they call Sharia law, their version of Sharia law. Let's be clear here, otherwise they will kill you. That's the reason the Saudis and Iranians have been killing each other for over 1,400 years, because they both disagree with Shia and Sunni Islam what is the correct version of Sharia law and who the real prophet's successor was. So yeah, go kill each other, sort it out. Anyway, that's the short version of what's going on. So in the case of the Islamic State, what happened is they said that they went in and killed al-Baghdadi. They eliminated the leader of the Islamic State, but that doesn't mean the group is over. Of course, there's a successor, but the very nature of an Islamo-fascist group is that while it may have an all-powerful leader or caliph, as he likes to, refer to himself because he's a humble guy, well, whatever. Point is, it's not a monolithic structure. Every cell is basically self-sufficient, self-contained, semi-autonomous, if not fully autonomous. And while they may pledge allegiance to someone like bin Laden, they, of course, can act on their own and don't always have to clear every act with headquarters. That's just the way it works. So the war continues. That's the bottom line. Now, what I'd like to do is spend the rest of this segment briefly recounting the differences between the two operations that killed bin Laden and al-Baghdadi, because it's important to see both the commonalities and, of course, what does differentiate them. Well, first of all, ironically, Donald Trump has played a role in both the how bin Laden was captured, as well as al-Baghdadi, of course. You might say, what are you talking about? Trump wasn't even president back then. Well, he didn't have to be. But the main guy who tipped off the U.S. government as to where bin Laden was by coughing up the mobile phone number of his courier. That's how they were able to trace bin Laden to that compound in Abbottabad, is they were studying the courier, tracking him. Well, they got the courier's mobile number from a guy named Felix Sater. And Felix Sater was indicted by the U.S. government for everything from income tax evasion and money laundering, hundreds of millions of dollars. And he was a real estate partner in an entity called Bayrock with a guy named Donald Trump. And although Trump escaped the indictment, everyone around him got nailed. And that's a pattern with Trump. Just look at the current one since he's been president. How many people surrounding Trump are in jail now? I don't have enough digits on my body to count all the people that have been nailed around him. And of course, he's innocent. Doesn't do anything wrong. It's just everyone around him does things wrong, right? Well, no, it's not that simple. But anyway, so Felix Sater is the guy who gave Uncle Sam, when he turned informant, the courier, the mobile number for bin Laden's courier. And that's exactly what happened. And so they took that information and then they monitored him. Then what they did is they created a phony CIA operation using vaccination programs as a cover. What the CIA did is they got a Pakistani doctor to be a spy, and he would go through the neighborhood to the military academy there, because we must remember that bin Laden's compound was less than a mile from the Pakistan's version of West Point military academy over there in Abbottabad. And they were doing vaccinations in the neighborhood. And he actually got inside the bin Laden compound, and based on the imagery that he was able to secretly capture, they were able to identify, as well as with some analysis of the waste and sewage removed from the compound, that yes, there were relatives of bin Laden there. That increased the likelihood that, of course, bin Laden himself was there. So what happened is, when they finally agreed to authorize the raid, President Obama made the decision not to tell anybody, not even Pakistan, even though they were violating Pakistan's airspace. And let's be clear, who cares whether their airspace is violated? Why you're violating it is the only thing that's important. I believe that if you're pursuing a fugitive, yeah, you cross that state line and you go get him. Okay, you don't let him go just because no one else on the other side of the state line isn't waiting for you. Whatever the legal process is, you need to do it. In the case of Pakistan, the U.S. government had made the logical legal decision to basically say, screw you, we're not going to talk to you anymore because you are lying to us. You're not really a partner. You're just taking our money. And every time you want more money, you allow a terrorist incident to happen. Then we freak out in the West. We give you more money to go solve it. You say, yeah, we'll solve it. No problem. Wink, wink. And then you take at least half the aid that we give you and you pocket it in your Swiss bank accounts or your offshore accounts in the Bahamas, whatever it is you do. You know, the corruption there was so bad, and the government supports these jihadis because that's the way they are, that you might as well not have had Pakistan in the fight at all, because it was essentially useless. And we know that Musharraf, the dictator there in power at the time, was, of course, hiding bin Laden. And I read in India the actual classified Pakistani internal investigation report, which basically said, and I reported on it for Daily Post newspaper and Daily World newspapers, that it basically concluded that all of Pakistani society has been compromised by the U.S. government, its intel agencies, specifically the CIA, and that Pakistan is basically a vassal country of both those interests and, of course, communist China, which bankrolls Pakistan's government right now so that it is a proxy to go ahead and mess with India. So there's these larger, far more important, deeper issues going on, way more important than bin Laden's presence secretly, illegally in Pakistan, being shielded by the government there. But a lot of people do not know that it was the Russian mafia, specifically Felix Sater, the same Russian who got Trump into trouble over this alleged collusion that happened in Moscow. He's the grease man in the middle of all of that, of course, predictably. Well, there he is again, popping up all these years later. And notice he's not going to prison because he's protected. No matter what he does, the government's not going to go after him because he has kept Stinger missiles out of terrorists' hands, and they allow him to do whatever and essentially operate in the open with impunity because of what he's done. We'll be back after this commercial break.
It's hard to listen to the news without realizing we're living in volatile, unprecedented times. Yet never has there been such an opportunity to transform the human condition. As old structures fail, where can we find the guidance to co-create a better way? Find Your Path Home is an ever-evolving, leading-edge information, education, and healing resource center designed to support and guide you on your path to unity and enlightenment. Based on sound principles employed by shamans worldwide, we provide techniques that can support you through the current transitions, offering online shamanic classes, international long-distance shamanic healing sessions, complimentary Mission Evolution radio episodes and Stairway to Heaven TV vignettes, seminars, retreats, and much more. All of this can be found on findyourpathhome.com.
So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me. simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
Path Home Shamanic Art School proudly presents the Gathering of Shaman 2019 Fall Retreat, Manifestation Samhain. Join me, certified shamanic instructor Gwilda Wiyaka, in the magnificent Colorado Mountains this November 2nd and 3rd for a life-changing event. Participate in unique teachings and ceremonies that'll put the power and magic of shamanic manifestation into your hands. Sit in circle with like-minded individuals, sharing group energy and the power it generates. Classes will be held in a facility next to the beautiful, majestic Arkansas River, further empowering the experience. Space is limited, so reserve your spot today. For more information, visit findyourpathhome.com or email touchin@findyourpathhome.com.
Welcome back to the second segment here on Cal's Corner Radio on X Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Cal Corfin. I'm your host. The executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. And we're talking about how the CIA, U.S. government, was able to determine where bin Laden was so they could go in and go kill him, which they did. Well, again, that info was supplied by Felix Sater, a Russian mafia figure that was indicted by the U.S. government and became an FBI informant, among other things. He has done a lot of favors for the U.S. government, and in exchange for that, essentially has a get-out-of-jail card free, and that's the deal. And what's interesting is that these deals with Sater go back across several administrations, going back to the Bush administration. They go back to the Obama administration. They were renewed again just before Trump became president. Loretta Lynch personally signed off on renewing the deal again because the judge called her and told her this document and agreement's going to expire and go public by noon if you don't get off your you-know-what and renew it, or it becomes declassified. They renewed it. It's just pathetic that the Attorney General has to be reminded to do something like that. She was too busy talking to Clinton at the airport over grandkids, it seems. So anyway, so if you look at who handled the deals with Sater, you had FBI Director Mueller, FBI Director Comey. Sound familiar? Eric Holder. You even had Giuliani in there when he, of course, was involved in the prosecution's office before he was corrupt, at least the way he is now. So again, you see the same names over and over and over in there. That's why, as somebody very familiar with this data over the years, having reported on it, it's in an upcoming book that I've written that documents how and why the intelligence community spied on Trump, and there were valid reasons to do it, had nothing to do with whether he was guilty or not. The people he hung out with and was taking money from and doing business with, my God, it was a bunch of red flares for the U.S. government, and they used Trump and all of that stuff without Trump's knowledge to monitor what the Russians were doing, to spy on them. It was just as bad as the CIA and Mossad and all these other entities opening up a bank account at, I think it was a BICI bank scandal, in the 1980s and when that was going on. Everyone was laundering money and running covert ops through there. And the reason it was handy for all of these players is because they could keep an eye on each other. But then what happened is the whole bank was a complete financial fraud. There was a lot of laundering going on. It collapsed, and then, of course, when it collapsed, as part of the fallout of the Iran-Contra scandal, the world found out about it. The bank, of course, was dissolved. These things happen, but this type of activity goes on all the time. Now, what about the killing of al-Baghdadi? Was the Russian mafia involved in that? No. Very different this time, except on a much more personal note, although it's very fascinating. What happened is, like bin Laden, all good terrorists who are the heads of these large organizations, they have, of course, people who are head of their security. They're their trusted guys, okay? Well, in the case of al-Baghdadi, something went down between him and his head of security. So the head of security decided, that's it, you're out. So, very aware that there was as much as $25 million waiting for this individual, he decided to steal, I'm not making this up, some used soiled underwear, quote unquote, from al-Baghdadi to get that precious DNA samples. So he turns over basically his underwear to the CIA. They analyze it, find out it is al-Baghdadi's real DNA. And now they know that this guy at least has access to his underwear. Okay? All right. So as they agree to cut a deal there, the guy goes back into the terrorist group ISIS, pretends to carry out his role of head of security there. And then about a month before they take him out, a few days ago, they got even a blood sample of al-Baghdadi, so they're able to find out his health and to confirm again that this really was him. Then they received further intel, thanks to the Kurds who had planted other spies in there, that Baghdadi was going to move and leave the compound and head further northeast, and it would be harder to go ahead and get him, even though they knew where he was going, because they had further distance to travel. Plus, Trump had already unilaterally ordered, shocking everybody, in a move that was universally condemned, and deservedly so. When he ordered the pulling out of that area, all of a sudden that meant it would be harder to get Baghdadi where he was now before he moved, because all of a sudden you got the Turkish military in there and you got a bunch of Russian troops who were not there before. Thanks, Trump. So what the commanders did is, when they realized that they have to deal with this in the real world instead of what Trump lives, whatever world, in the White House, they slow rolled it on the ground and said, yes, sir, we'll do it, Mr. President. And they did it, but they took their time, just enough time to allow the operation to also get al-Baghdadi and wrap it up. And that's exactly what happened. What happened is they took anywhere from 8 to 11 CH-47 helicopters. They landed troops outside this area where he was holed up. They went in there, took care of business, secured some of the women and children, killed some women who were wearing suicide vests, of course, which I'm sorry to say you have to do. If you can't determine why they're wearing it, they don't know. Then what happened is they went ahead and were able to trace al-Baghdadi he had gone down a tunnel which had a dead end. And, of course, attack dogs were chasing him. And Trump talks about, how he behaved like a coward, how he was crying and, whining and all that stuff. None of that has been verified. Doesn't really matter. What matters is that they got him. And al-Baghdadi decided to detonate himself, killing 2 of his kids with him. And then they took some of the remains there, identified it on the spot as being his DNA. That is case closed. And then I think it was the next day or two they killed his successor, okay? And now there's another successor, and of course he'll be terminated as well. Now I understand why Trump is happy and proud that the head of ISIS was killed. The world should throw a holiday, as far as I'm concerned, and give everybody the day off with pay. But that's not how the world works. I think most of the world, to be blunt, doesn't care, as pathetic as that is, because they don't see how the Islamic State is affecting them. Now, I want you to think about this for a second. Look at yourself. Where do you live? Wherever, doesn't matter. Do you know of anybody personally who has been killed by the Islamic State? Can you name a neighbor or a friend or a relative of yours, anybody listening here, who has lost anybody to Hamas, Al-Qaeda? Name your terrorist group that's an Islamist or Islamofascist, other than people who have served in the military where they're in a combat zone. Have you lost anybody? The odds are probably no. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not saying one thing one way or another. It just hasn't happened. And that's why most people don't care. They don't see how it affects them. Oh, that's on the other side of the world. That's in another country. That's an Arab issue. That's an Islamic issue. That's a Jewish issue. That's not an American issue. We don't belong there. Let them go kill each other. Doesn't matter. Again, none of that is that simple. But yet people have those attitudes. And let's be honest, the world has become numb, or we just kind of roll with it, with the idea that a terrorist attack will break out and kill a bunch of people. It's happened many times since 9/11. Welcome to the reality of today until the root causes of terrorism are destroyed, which is hatred. But that's not being done. So, of course, all you're doing is playing whack-a-mole, basically. Yeah, you can take some of the guys out ahead of time, but you'll never eliminate them completely. And then, of course, you have states in there who use these guys to further their agendas. And that's where it gets really messy, because states, the UN doesn't address the state sponsorship of terrorism issue, because then it would have to look at its own self in the mirror and go after its own children, so to speak, and it's not going to do that. The UN isn't going to do that. All right. So those are the two differences between the operations, basically, that killed the two leaders of al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. Again, the Russian mafia gave up the mobile number of bin Laden's courier in exchange for truth, justice, and the American way, meaning they were allowed a free pass. Fine. Whatever. Then al-Baghdadi, something personal went down between these two jihadis, lover, spout, or whatever, decides he's just going to, take it to him and turn in his DNA sample. And apparently this source who did all this watched the attack on the ground. And, of course, he's now living fat, dumb, and happy somewhere else. His career as a head of security for any terrorist organization is over, but I'm sure the individual doesn't care. All right. Now, let's switch to some different subjects here. We're basically done with politics. Again, we've got a vote coming. We'll talk about this real quickly before the break. There's an impeachment thing going on against Trump. It's along party lines, folks, which means you have a divided country again, divided government. Congratulations, Democrats. Congratulations, Republicans. This is exactly how to get your asses tossed out of power in the upcoming elections, because people are tired of you. They don't want this, because unless you have something more than a party vote issue, along party ideological lines, you've got nothing. People expect the divisions in politics. That's why there's different parties. But when the evidence doesn't seem to be there to tip it one way or another, innocent or guilty, who knows, well, then you've got yet another circus, another set of monkeys, different day, and more Americans are just going to say, we don't want any of you in power. And it'll be very interesting if this continues with the upcoming votes. In the meantime, some candidates have dropped out, which is really cool. Beto O'Rourke has dropped out. And friends of mine, have actually reported themselves as being safe now on Facebook, that they didn't have their AR-15s taken away. They're very happy about that. So Beto O'Rourke is out of the race. Don't let the door hit his ass on the way out. Kamala Harris is probably going to drop out because she's pulling out in New Hampshire. And if she doesn't do well in Iowa, all she can hope is that somebody throws her a lifeline, tries to make her a Veep candidate. And I hope to God that nobody in the Democratic Party is that stupid to do it. But, we're talking about the Dumbocrats, and there's a reason they're called Dumbocrats, because the Democrats do dumb things. We'll be back after this commercial break.
Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X-Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X-Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
Welcome back to the third segment here on Cal's Corner Radio on the X Zone Broadcast Network. Once again, my name is Cal Korff, and I'm your host. The executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. Now, we're done with politics for this show. Let's switch to the other P, paranormal, and let's get into it. In the current issue of the Skeptical Inquirer, which is one of my favorite magazines, I have an article, I think it's on page 14, called From Cosmic Watergate to Cosmic Watermelon, the Stanton Friedman that I once knew. And what it is it's basically an article that recounts a couple incidents with Friedman and I that caused us to, let's say, fall apart or fall out intellectually, UFO-wise, case study-wise. We agreed to disagree because regardless of what you think of cases like the Roswell UFO crash in 1947, which again is a modern myth, thanks to people like Stanton Friedman, I am the author of the best-selling expose book of Roswell of all time. I'm one of the 4 original Roswell researchers with Friedman and Bill Moore. Bill Moore wrote the first Roswell incident book that put Roswell on the map. He endorsed my book, which concluded it was Project Mogul. And believe me, I was shocked myself. All right, so anyway, the article is essentially a much shorter version of the longer 5,000-word article that was published originally by Rob McConnell in the X Chronicles newsletter a few issues back. So I would recommend that people get that newsletter from Rob at X Zone because it's a much longer article. It's written in first person, so I apologize for the numerous uses of the personal pronoun I, but it is my story and what happened. To make a long story short, again, having met Stanton Friedman when I was a young boy, when I found out in October of 1976, and I'm a teenager, that another star map had been found that supposedly destroyed Betty Hill's alien star map that Marjorie Fish had come up with that Stanton Friedman was the largest promoter of. Of course, both couldn't be right, both claims. So I went to Stanton and I said, what's going on here? And he said, no, this other thing is incredible. And he said, don't bother studying it. And I said, well, it needs to be exposed one way or another because both claims can't be right. You don't just sit there and blow it off. You need to expose it one way or another. The point is, it's out there. It needs to be addressed because people like Carl Sagan and other people who are much more famous were starting to chime in on this on the pages of magazines like Astronomy Magazine, which is a very prestigious publication. So what happened is I told Stan, I'll be the person, the middle guy, who will go in between astronomer Charles Atterberg and you and Robert Schaefer, the so-called evil debunker that Stanton Friedman warned me about, which is complete hooey. Bob Schaefer's quite a nice guy, actually. And what happened is I corresponded with Atterberg, determined to prove him wrong. And here I am, a kid in high school, barely, doing all this for over a year, and I ran the trap between all the people. And it turns out a year later, that was able to prove easily, even if you are not an expert in astronomy, so Friedman has no excuse, that Friedman was wrong, that the Marjorie Fish star map was no longer valid, was never actually really valid. It was a big Rorschach blot. Well-intentioned effort, but using modern, more updated astronomical data, it imploded itself. The Atterberg star map was much better, was a better fit, and the fact that you had more than one star map candidate now was proof that the Hill star map was useless. It was a Rorschach blot. It could be matched to anything if you, depending on what criteria you used. So over a year went by, and I finally have this file, and it's about an inch thick. And I'm trying to reach Friedman and talk to him about it, as the correspondence which has started to leak out now from the 1970s, from these original documents, which still exist, have proven Friedman was kind of ducking the issue. So I went over to his house, confronted him about that and a few other things, like the Roswell UFO crash, which I'll come back to in a moment. And as I handed this file to Friedman, he looked at it for about 30 seconds, as I mentioned in the article, and said, "I don't know, I'm not an astronomer." It's like, okay, but you're enough of an astronomer to promote the lies about the fish map. Go ahead and write a book about it years later. Go to your grave lying to the world about it. And this was a problem, again, that I had with Friedman, because he had the problem that he accused others of doing. Here's some classic lines. I remember them from being a kid. "Don't confuse me with facts. My mind is already made up." Well, that was Stan Friedman. He used to say that debunkers and skeptics were that way. Well, one of the first things that I mentioned, the very first thing, in his Skeptical Inquirer version of this article, and I mentioned it in Rob's article too, was that Friedman used his own twisted terminology. The word debunker. He said a debunker is a closed mind. Well, get off your asses, folks, and look it up in a dictionary. It does not mean that. It means to remove bunk from facts. Bunk is BS. It's nonsense. It's stuff that's not true. There's nothing wrong when you remove fact from fiction. In fact, that's a good thing. That doesn't mean you have a closed mind. It means you have an objective or critical thinking mind. But if you're going to say that someone who separates fact from fiction can't be trusted, because separating fact from fiction is having a closed mind, I don't even know what analogy to use to say how screwed up that is. That's like telling me that an elephant is a car, or that a car is, a rocket ship. No, it's not. They're never going to be the same thing. They have nothing to do with each other. And yet today you have a whole generation, if not two of them, of UFO idiots. And I'm sorry, they are idiots when they can't speak proper English. I have talked to several of these people, especially in the last year, trust me, online. And I ask them a simple question. What does the word debunker mean? Blah, 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 whatever. No, it doesn't. And then I paste from the dictionary, which they have in the same computer they're using, a Mac or an iPhone, what it means. And they don't know what to say, because there's nothing to say other than they're pathetic, that they don't understand. But they do understand what the word debunker means. But the reason they misrepresent it and twist it is because they don't even know their own view of the subject makes it practically a religion to them. So you'll hear two very curious things here. Again, misusing the word debunker. That is probably the number one litmus test you can use on anybody who claims they're an expert on UFOs or that they really know what they're talking about. Hold the debunker conversation with them. Show them what the word means on the smartphone. And if it's news to them, hang up, get rid of them, whatever. Don't hang around them, ignore them. Because they're not worth wasting your time on, because they're wasting your time. They're BSing you, they're lying, and worse, they may not even know any better. And yet they've got an IQ of over 10, go figure. All right, another issue was not only misusing the term debunker, but there's another problem here. And I confronted Friedman with this, and anybody else, same problem. I call it the Mossad problem. And this is the biggest problem regarding the subject of UFOs Not only today, but since at least 1947, folks, or at least 48. How about the year Israel came into existence? That pretty much is when this problem began. Basically, the short version is this. If a cosmic Watergate was going on, and Watergate was a political problem, so one of the issues I had with Stan is bad analogy, because Watergate is a political problem, where if UFOs are real, and we're being visited by a bunch of Captain Kirks out there with impunity, then that's a national security issue. It's beyond politics. It's global. All right, bad analogy aside, the term gate always is synonymous with some sort of cover-up. Well, let's assume, just for fun's sake, that in 1947, just like Friedman said, aliens crashed in New Mexico on the anniversary of the founding of America on July 4th, because they're patriotic guys, okay? And they happened to be found, not by Jesse Marcel, he missed the bodies, but they were found by someone else. We don't know, because, that's kind of a little vague, because it never happened. But independent of reality, let's say it all did, and that one of them even was alive for a while and talked to whomever. Let's quote what Annie Jacobson had said in her book, right? That's all good, that's all true. It's Annie. Well, again, think about this logically here, folks. Because even the most hardcore schizophrenic conspiracy nut would agree that Mossad, of all the intelligence agencies out there, is the biggest badass agency out there. There's nobody better. And they're not the biggest in the world. They're actually one of the smallest. But they're very efficient. So while it may take the CIA 10 times as many people to get the same thing done, well, Israel has other ways of doing it, much more efficient. So Mossad is the bad boy on the block. They're much badder than CIA, KGB, Chinese intelligence, anybody in there. They are the top guys. So answer me this. Where are the top secret Roswell Mossad files? Where are they? Where's the top secret UFO Mossad anything files? Name your case. Same answer. And that answer is, folks, they don't seem to be anywhere. In other words, Mossad is so concerned over the cosmic Watergate that Friedman warned us about, made his whole career out of. This whole disclosure thing, Tic Tacs keep them up at night, all this other stuff going on, that they don't even bother having any files on this stuff, except probably files documenting how stupid some of the people they spy on are, who believe this crap. So I call this the Mossad problem because it is a problem. When the number one intelligence agency doesn't care, there's nothing to care about. We'll be back after the break.
If you are looking for a safe, zero-calorie, natural option to the harmful artificial sweeteners on the market today, Just Like Sugar is what you're looking for. Just Like Sugar is a wonderful natural alternative for those health-conscious people who choose a calorie-restricted diet with a great, pure, sweet flavor that tastes just like sugar. Just Like Sugar is a great natural option for people suffering from diabetes and may be useful in restricted diet programs where standard sugars are not allowed and does not cause a laxative effect of some other sweeteners. Just Like Sugar comprises a perfect blend of chicory root fiber, natural calcium, natural vitamin C, and Just Like Sugar's sweetness comes from the natural flavors from the peel of the orange. Just Like Sugar is a natural alternative to harmful artificial sweeteners and will change the way that you believe all natural sweetener products taste. Just Like Sugar is available at your local Whole Foods markets, Wild Oats markets, Henry's, Sun Harvest, and many other fine natural food stores in the U.S., Canada, and worldwide. They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by al-Mar, UFO Disclosure, The 70-Year Cover-Up Exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now to receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Memorable dynamic presentations are a not-so-secret weapon in the business world. Do you have a powerful message that must be shared, but you haven't found a way to deliver that message? Do you want to be known as a top public speaker who gets amazing results? Are you ready to create and deliver your powerful message? Thomas Hides can help you create and deliver your speech to get the results you desire. Visit iconquality.com.
Did you expect your business to flourish, but instead it plateaued or didn't get off the ground yet? Would you like to achieve massive goals and discover new sources of income within your business? When you're ready to experience that type of success with fast results, Cindy Hendricks is the business coach for you. Her work with entrepreneurs and business owners has been life-changing. To get you and your business where you want to be, go to imaginemoresuccess.com.
Has the fear of public speaking stalled your business or personal life? What would you give to develop and maintain supreme confidence? Have an invaluable private program to always perform at your best. Imagine how you would feel. You can have all that and so much more today with Thomas Hides' life-changing course called Number One Fear Unleashed. Visit numberonefear.com and be liberated from your fear of public speaking.
Okay, we're back for the fourth and final segment here on Cal's Corner Radio Show on the X Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Cal Korff. I'm your host. The executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. Now, again, we were talking about the paranormal UFOs, what I call the Mossad problem. And it really is the main problem facing UFOdom today. Because there's a thing called cause and effect. If Roswell really happened, or let's say it didn't, but there's all this visitation going on by aliens. There's abductions, there's trying to get to our nuclear weapons, there's buzzings of, pilots and witnesses and all, you name it. It's all over there. Just Google it. It's all real, right? If all this stuff were going on, or even if one of these things were true, you would like to think, or at least hope, for the sake of the human race, that Mossad would be all over it, because it would be an existential threat. And of all the countries that take existential threats seriously, Israel is on top of her game that way. I know of no other country that's more hardcore about that issue. So why is it that they don't seem to care about the UFO problem? You'd have to ask those disclosure morons. They've got all the answers. Now let's talk about disclosure, because this is all related here. So you've got people who believe in Roswell. You've got people who can't use the word debunker properly. You've got people who are living epitomes of don't confuse me with facts my mind's already made up. And, of course, they practice ufology, not ufology. Ufology is very different. That's the scientific study of UFO reports. Not UFOs, because they won't cooperate, but UFO data. okay? Where ufology is when you make a conclusion about a UFO case that is not derivable from the data. That's ufology. And most of what we are told today is ufology is really ufology. And let me go ahead and focus on this disclosure thing. I have told people online, people like UFO Jesus, that not only do they not know what they're talking about where concerns disclosure, I've actually told him for there to be post-disclosure, which is what he likes to call himself, other than UFO Jesus online. He has a Twitter handle at post-disclosure. I said post means after something has happened, doesn't it? Since there's been no disclosure, there can't be post-disclosure because disclosure hasn't happened for there to be a post anything. Well, he didn't like that answer. Then he was mad, was going to block me. And I said, well, I didn't know telling you the truth was worthy of being blocked, but go ahead. Go for it. Bring it on. I don't care. So what I've done is I have put there out on the internet facts that not only am I one of the 4 original Roswell researchers, and I'm the only one who has the best-selling book exposing Roswell. It exposes all 22 other books that constitute the public's knowledge on this case. It was the first and only book at first to even expose Colonel Philip Corso. And the book still stands. I remember one of the marketing campaigns for it was Einstein was right, E equals MC 22 instead of MC squared because it took out 22 books. And it still stands. Roswell was Project Mogul, and Bill Moore, the original author of the Roswell Incident book, which started this, he wrote it with Charles Berlitz, he endorsed my book. And then I put out there in these slides that I did for my October 19th media event, I went ahead and showed here not only is Bill Moore and I, and that History Matters, it was in a slide series called History Matters, and I've posted those on my Facebook page. They're real. You can check them out. I don't care whether you believe them or not. Not my monkey, not my circus, not my problem, but it's there. And then I show a document where I am part of this so-called disclosure thing, meaning a entity called Fair Witness had been created in the mid-1990s. I was part of that. My name is part of that, along with Friedman and Bill Moore. And as I pointed out to these disclosure nuts, it was made up. Jamie Shandera and Bill Moore made up the whole idea of the aviary and disclosure. They did. They tried to recruit me into it thanks to Richard Doty, who was Mr. Falcon, right? Well, it didn't work. I said no. I went public with it. I exposed it. It's in my book. It's been out there since the 90s. So like I tell people like UFO Jesus, this went down before you were even born. And yet here you are talking out of your mouth, or whatever orifice you want to call it, saying post-disclosure, when it hasn't, there's no disclosure. It was made up because Shandera and Moore, like the movie The Falcon and the Snowman. I'm not even sure if UFO Jesus has ever bothered, streaming that movie from Netflix. I don't know. But they took the idea of the aviary, Falcon and the Snowman, hello, from that. And there's no question this is how it happened. But, you'd never know it based on how you see these people talk. It's ridiculous. And now if you Google all this, you would never know this other history I just told you unless I bothered to report it to you. Because it just isn't there anymore. We have a generation, at least one now, who believes in such stupid things that it is scary. And it's time that we put our foot down and try to reverse some of this because it's not going to get better. And things have become so polarized now that a lot of these people are even voting. And that's even scarier because if they can't separate what the word debunker means from the word black or white or red or blue or anything else that's common sense, you're going to trust them to determine your leader? I hope not. And the media itself, because it's owned by a handful of companies, 90% of it is in the hands of just a handful now. Well, of course, Discovery isn't going to go against this UFO case because they're promoting it as real on Alien Highway. It's ridiculous. But this is what has happened. So when I did this event on October 19th, a few weeks back, I revealed that 10 cases are being exposed and rolled out. I'll talk about them real quickly. And I'm excited about one of them, especially because it's a classic case. And because we will solve it, we'll finally find out the truth. We just don't know what it's going to be ahead of time. We're not debunkers, okay? We don't have our minds made up ahead of time, to quote Friedman. And I'm talking about the Trent case. I announced, and I've had the conferences with Dr. Bruce Maccabee and Roy Neal, that we're going to do, finally, the first 3D computer reconstruction of the famous McMinnville Trent photos that Paul Trent took in 1950. By recreating it down to the pixel, you will be able to prove whether this object was large, a distant away, or it was small, close to the camera. You'll be able to even walk under it, however big it is. So we're going to start this in January after Christmas. We've agreed on the protocols and the interfaces, and this is going to be exciting. And to be honest, it should have been done a long time ago. We wanted to do it many years ago, but never got around to it. About 20 years went by. Nobody else bothered doing it. I'd like to see someone else take a crack at it, but that's one of the things we're going to be doing. And I intend to make that footage available exclusively to the X-Zone, to where you can just use your mouse and roll around on 360 on the Trent reconstructions. Go for it, solve it. It's right there. If somebody says it's real and the computer reconstruction proves it's not, again, disconnect or ignore that person. It's not worth it. Okay? So what's going to happen is the first article came out as well because of around this event, which was an update to the Bob Kiviat lawsuit regarding InterNASA and Joe Firmage. It's going back to court. The judge has vacated the settlement because the other side lied to the judge. So there's a 3,300-word article about it now that has been out on Medium. It will be appearing elsewhere. I have seen the court documents before they were filed, so I know they're real. And this is part 1 of 3. The other 2 parts tie together, believe it or not, the ATIP techno scam and To the Stars Academy techno scam, where people like Hal Puthoff have been involved in all scams, all 3, because that's what Hal Puthoff does. And it's going to be very interesting to get him under oath. And believe me, every attempt is going to be made to do that, and he deserves it. Because none of these guys can afford to go under oath. This includes Pandolfi. He's back in the news. Same with Congressman Bill Marriott. And Brandon Fugel, who has been outed now as the real owner of Skinwalker Ranch, which, of course, is being milked for another series on Surprise History Channel. Wow. Again, the same people over and over and over again. What a coincidence, right? No, it's more like collusion. So again, this is going to be interesting because it goes back to court in February at the latest. This month, the updated documents with the court have been filed and more people have been added to the suit. So that update is out. Parts 2 and 3 will come as it's logical to release it. There's also going to be releasing of further data back from Washington, D.C. regarding Pandolfi. What have they done regarding him? Is he doing this on orders or not? There are complaints against him now, and those complaints will be made public in the near future. And they're very real, absolutely real. In fact, at the event, I showed 3 slides. They were redacted, but there were 3 slides from the formal complaint that TTSA is going to be sent in December, unredacted. It's around 90-odd pages. And they will have about 45 days to respond to that complaint that also went to the SEC. And if they don't respond to it and fill in the answers to some very interesting questions, well, it'll be interesting to see what happens from there. So all this is going down, folks, and this is going to be in the pipeline while people are busy munching away on turkey for Thanksgiving and enjoying the holidays. But it is happening, and it is coming, and this is exactly what I showed on the 19th, and I've released some of the slides from what was an over 9-hour event. So that is what's going on right now. And again, the cases were that we showed the entire spectrum of things coming out. We did the Kiviat update, the updated article on Stanton Friedman. The Annie Jacobson book is essentially finished. What's being added now is a link to a book that exposes the Hill case that's coming out November 22nd. That is the expected ship date for the Annie Jacobson expose as well on Amazon.com. Join me next week, and we'll continue this, and see you next week for another episode of Cal's Corner.
Shamanic healing is the key to personal empowerment. Why? All 4 levels of our being, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, must be addressed for us to enjoy balanced, healthy, abundant lives. Yet there are few provisions for spiritual or energetic healing. Shamanism, found at the root of all cultures, is a very effective spiritual healing modality. To find quality shamanic healing you can trust, regardless of where you live, look no further than Find Your Path Home Long-Distance Shamanic Healing Program. All Path Home Long-Distance Healing practitioners have been trained and certified through Path Home Shamanic Art School. Change your life. Live abundantly. Schedule a long-distance shamanic healing session with Gwilda Wiyaka or one of her quality practitioners today at findyourpathhome.com.